Hi, welcome to the UX Design Thinking Project presentation by Anna Jinneman and William Roberts. So for stage one, we decided to have a problem statement that went along with TTRPGs, tabletop role-playing games, and basically how there's supposed to be a fun and carefree way to blow off steam and enjoy time with friends, but unfortunately, organizing a time to play tabletop RPGs and finding people to play with takes so much time that many people avoid playing altogether. Tabletop RPGs allow for people to experience a sense of community, make friends, and have fun in a world where stress levels are extremely high, especially right now. An application that can be used to handle scheduling, find a group to play with, and to keep in touch with your current tabletop RPG group would alleviate the pressures that many players feel. A single, all-encompassing application would allow users to have one place to go for all of their tabletop RPG needs instead of having to keep track of information on several different applications. Users would be able to schedule games with their tabletop RPG groups, mark down which days and times would or would not work for individuals, so it kind of makes scheduling a little bit easier. Being able to communicate with other members of your group to get information or notifications if a game would change or would be canceled would be very useful for users as well. We decided that this application would be able to solve many different common problems that exist with the tabletop RPG community and make players enjoy RPGs a little bit more without having to worry about scheduling and other really stressful aspects of the games. So we decided to recruit people who had experience, at least a little bit of experience playing tabletop RPGs. Most of our users had about 2 to 5 years of experience when we interviewed them. One of our users was still pretty brand new. I think she had about 3 months of experience during her interview, but we decided to interview them with a series of questions. First, we asked them about their experiences playing tabletop RPGs, how important it is, like what role it plays in their life on a scale from 1 to 10, what problems that they currently had with tabletop RPGs, like what gave them anxiety, and then we ended up giving them an exit survey at the end to kind of just get a more honest answer of their real experiences playing tabletop RPGs, just in case they were a little bit nervous during their interview. We did this over Discord, which is kind of like a messaging app like Slack, a little bit more relaxed and used in the gaming community. And we were able to talk over the call with each of our interviewees. When we were done interviewing them, we basically asked like what their goals and problems and anxieties were, along with their hopes, so we could really understand what we needed to target this application towards. We wanted to be able to like really understand our users at a deeper level instead of just asking them like the classic questions of like, what would you like to see in this application? We wanted to really know like what stressed them out, so we could target this more towards people who are having a little bit more trouble with RPGs. And so that's what we ended up doing when we asked them. This example is of Matt, who's one of our friends. He's 28. Something that he said is frustrating to him is when he can't remember what happened in previous sessions. So when we talked to him about this specifically, it gave us the idea to maybe enter like a journal or a notes section in our application. At the end of this, after interviewing all 5 people, we found that empathy is a really crucial part of human-centered design. Each of these interviews helped us understand that we didn't really understand users the way that we thought we did before we interviewed them. We thought that we knew exactly what our program should do and what users would want. However, we were very wrong about that. Not only did the interview show us that, we could improve our ideas and our application, but it also gave us new ideas and helped us really understand what people are actually struggling with, aside from scheduling or, not being able to remember stuff. So that was stage 1. Stage 2, we decided to use kind of the information we got from our 5 interviewees and create personas that encompassed all 5 of them within 2 different personas. So this first persona we made was a female named Stephanie. She's 22 years old, and she helped give a little bit of a voice to our interviewees who were more experienced with tabletop RPGs. She's a student, and her main concern was that she wanted an easier way to schedule sessions, because it's something that is important to her, and she wants to play tabletop RPGs on a regular basis. However, she's not necessarily able to do that with their current form of scheduling. And the other thing she really wanted to be able to accomplish with this application is to be able to gain feedback on becoming a better game master. So she really helped us figure out what our more experienced players would want, and she kind of encompassed exactly what our interviewees gave us information-wise. So that was our first persona. And our second persona here, this is Daniel. He's a 20-year-old male. He is also a student, part-time student, and he is representing our more unexperienced tabletop RPG players. So he's pretty new to tabletop RPGs, and he enjoys playing them. However, they don't really play a big part in his life. His main concerns with the tabletop RPGs is that he just doesn't really feel comfortable playing them yet, and he wants to be able to maintain organization, and really just not be a problem player just because he's new. So something that we wanted to be able to do for our newer players is to really be able to provide an experience that would help them stay relaxed, help them stay organized, so they didn't feel anxious about playing with their friends when it really should be a fun and joyful experience. The last thing that we ended up doing in our stage 2 was building a business model canvas. This is a little bit more tricky since neither of us have any experience in a business or anything like that. So we kind of figured that our tabletop RPG application would be used mostly by like app stores or maybe a couple game stores that wanted to promote themselves and promote an app that would make it easier for people to play. We decided that we would mostly need like developers and users. We'd probably need some sort of designers in there as well. This is something that we wanted to be able to have cross-platform, potentially around the world. So we decided on like a global customer target as well. This also helped us kind of understand that the cost of our application would be a little bit tricky. So we decided that maybe making an application that was free with advertisements or free with like a pay for service would be a kind of interesting way to go. Throughout this stage, at the end, we found out that a lot of different users have a lot of different ideas of what they need and what would make them feel better playing tabletop RPGs. We decided that different people, just based off the 2 personas we made, would want completely different things from our application. So creating these personas would actually end up helping us figure out how to make a more all-encompassing app that people would use even if they weren't super experienced or if they're brand new. This also helped us kind of understand our financial limits, how we can't exactly put an application out there and expect people to pay for it straight off the bat. And it also helped us understand what we would exactly need to do to get out advertisements or what we'd need to actually build the app. So stage 3, ideation, this was the most fun stage in my opinion. It allowed us to really like hone in on what we wanted from the application, not only using like the information we gained from our interviewees and the personas that we created, but it also just let William and I figure out a lot of different like cool ideas that we think would be really fun to have in an app. And that's what the dreamer section of this allowed us to do. So some of the stuff on there that is just like completely out of the realm of possibilities, like a digital rule book, which would be like super helpful for brand new players. However, as our realist and critic help us understand, it's not exactly something that could be done very easily. That brings us to the realist, actually. A lot of this really helped us calm down our ideas. Maybe more so like helping us implement it in a realistic way, as the realist does. But it also kind of like made us think a little bit more on like why we can't have the user rulebooks. Like we cannot buy the rights to sell core rulebooks on our application, especially for just like starting out. It's not within our financial realm of possibility. So this really helped us understand what would be a realistic option for our application. And then finally, our critic ideation helped us understand what really needs to go. A lot of these critic ideas, some of them were a little bit more realistic for like William and mine ideas and financial expectations for the application. So like I mentioned before, those core rule books, way too expensive, and it creates the liability of maybe us not using our rights correctly and getting sued by the companies, and stuff like that. So the critic really helped us decide what absolutely needs to go and what we can end up keeping. From our findings from the ideation, like I said, we decided what we really needed and what we could not have whatsoever. It helped us explore our new ideas through the dreamer section. It helped us figure out the practicality of our ideas using the realist section, and then it also helped us decide what features to cut, which is kind of the more sad part. Stage 4, the prototyping. So we started off with this sketch kind of over here to the far right, of just a couple different pages that we decided on. We have like the home page, a survey page, a calendar page, a page to keep track of your characters, your character journal, and then like a voice/text channel for users to use. So our sketch was like a kind of sloppy, basic layout of ideas that helped us create our low functionality or low fidelity prototype, which is over there on the left side of the images. Our low fidelity prototype was a very quickly put together prototype that we also used Adobe XD for. We basically took these sketches and implemented them into the low fidelity prototype almost exactly. We made a couple minor changes from the sketch to the low fidelity prototype, but both of them helped us kind of understand how the application actually needed to move and like what we actually needed in the application for users to be able to understand it without reading instructions or anything like that. Which brings us to our high fidelity prototype. Our high fidelity prototype took a lot longer than we expected it to. We used Adobe XD as I'm sure everyone else did as well. However, we were really able to explore a lot of different ideas for the layout of this. We stuck pretty closely to our original low fidelity prototype and our sketches. However, seeing it all come to life was a very, very cool part. It also helped us kind of understand like what symbols are actually recognizable and what ones are not. There's a lot of playing around with different symbols and names for sections and stuff like that. And then this prototype also really helped us figure out our 10 usability heuristics and how to implement them on hopefully each page. One of those things being like the match between system and real world. We wanted to make sure everything is, recognizable, and hopefully we were able to do that decently well. Stage 5, the testing was honestly the part I was the most scared about, but I think it went pretty good. We ended up testing 5 participants, 4 of which were the same people we interviewed at the beginning. Unfortunately, our fifth guy couldn't interview again, so we had to find someone new. But we ended up interviewing 4 males and 1 female. I think the average age was 21.6 years. So they were all people who were within our expected user age. And we wanted to make sure we had at least 1 female voice within the lot. So luckily we were able to do that. We ended up giving a monitored test. What we did was we called these people and streamed over Discord. So we ended up sending them the high fidelity Adobe XD link and tested them going through that. We ended up giving 2 versions of the test, and this was because we wanted to make sure that it was either the test or the application. We wanted to see if the test we gave changed the way that people interacted with the application versus if it was just the application itself, and that's what people were having the issues with. So the first version of the test we ended up giving to 2 people out of our 5, and it was the version of the test where we would call them and I would read the instructions out loud to them. We did this because we wanted to see how people would work and function more under pressure when they didn't have the instructions right there in front of their face. And the interesting thing is they actually performed differently. But the second version of the test was the version where we sent them the typed out instructions and they read them aloud as they performed each task. And this was a very insightful way to gain information as well. I think it was actually a little bit more effective to send them the instructions and have them perform. And then we also gave an exit survey at the end too, to make sure that they felt like the instructions were kind of fair and made sense and it wasn't the application again. So we wanted to really make sure it was either the test or the application that was kind of funky. So here are the test instructions that we gave, and I think that they're pretty straightforward. We wanted to try to test every single page to see like the navigability of our application and see like how people interacted with it, since we ended up putting a kind of like drop-down menu on almost every single page, and then also a back button. So we wanted to see the number of clicks, how long people would take to navigate the application, any hesitations they have that like maybe show us that something is not entirely clear to them. Maybe something needed to be tweaked is mostly what we used our hesitations for. And then we also wanted to see if they would use the back button or the drop-down menu. Since, like I said, we put it on almost every single page, and in my opinion, it is the easier way to navigate our application. So we wanted to see how people would interact with it, or if people would even notice that it was there. So here are our results for testing. So this is our number of clicks per step. So of the people that we interviewed, it seems like there's some pretty obvious steps here that were a little bit more confusing. Step number 2 is not looking so great there. It definitely had the highest number of clicks and the most confusion, as well as like step 12, step 3, and step 4. Yeah, they all had a little bit of issues there, but luckily we were able to gain that insight through keeping track of the number of clicks. This is our hesitation delays. Once again, we can see that step 2 and step 12 there are very, very difficult for people to understand. And these were the steps. Step 2 was to navigate to the calendar page and to mark a day that you were available for. A lot of people missed our drop-down menu, which was pretty eye-opening. I guess it did not pop out, or it wasn't in the position that people expected it to be. And then step 12 was to navigate to the Restore Characters tab. And I think a lot of people had trouble with this because it was under the settings page rather than the characters page. So maybe adding a link from the characters page as well would have been something that we should have done originally. This is my favorite one, the drop-down menu usage. Like I said, I think it's easiest to navigate our app through our drop-down menu. However, a lot of people did not use our drop-down menu or didn't figure out that it is even there until the end. So it was kind of interesting too. We got some feedback from John actually that said that he wishes that he would have noticed the drop-down menu earlier, the pancake menu as he called it, because he wasn't navigating with it. He was using the back button only, and in some spots you have to click the back button twice to get back to the home page, which is not ideal. So he mentioned that we maybe should have made it stand out a little bit more. So yeah, that was a very interesting thing to me. And then lastly, here is where we get to see the difference of the tests we gave. So test 1 in blue there is where I read the instructions out loud to the testee as we were watching them take the test. The number of hesitations in this test, which we gave to Emma and Jack, it ended up being a lot more than the hesitations of test 2, where the subject got the instructions sent to them and they were able to read them for themselves. And I think this is because they didn't have the instructions there in front of them, that is why they hesitated. But it is interesting to see that perhaps it isn't the application in those spots, and maybe it is just the test. But it was definitely an interesting test to give them, 2 different versions. And finally, the findings that we got from our tests, they were very eye-opening. Based on the information that we were able to gather, we figured out that certain steps, step 2 and 12 mainly, they pointed out that the application needed some work there. We had the highest number of issues with our calendar page. I think that's because it was not very clear. Someone mentioned that they couldn't actually find the drop-down menu, and it was pretty obvious when they could not find the drop-down menu. Either they were hesitating and they didn't understand if they'd finished the question or not, the task. And it also helped us understand that things are not exactly where users want them to be. That example of the characters page, a lot of our users thought that there would be like a restore character option, since there was a delete character option within the characters page. However, they didn't realize that they had to go all the way to the settings menu. Something that also kind of stood out to me is the fact that people didn't realize that they'd have to go to the settings menu, because one of the tasks we asked them to do at the beginning is to delete a character, and the pop-up that I put up on there, it says to go to the settings tab to restore a character. So it's pretty blatant that no one actually read the pop-up and just clicked OK, since they were just following their tasks. And I think that really shows, since no one really understood where exactly the restore character tab was. Yeah, so that was definitely one of the issues that we would probably fix if we went back to fix things. And then the last thing that we found from our testing is that some things that made sense to us don't make sense to the users. For example, one of these things is the journal tab. When we're looking at our characters or character page, and you can go into the character journal, it's kind of a split screen instead of in the menu, and that made sense to me as a developer, and a lot of people got tripped up on that as well. So it really opened our eyes to see just exactly how the users that actually interact with the application, like to see if it is actually navigable, to see if it was intuitive, and to see if our symbols made sense. And a lot of the people that we interviewed mentioned that, the app was pretty navigable, but they did get tripped up in certain spots. And since a lot of people got tripped up in those spots, it's pretty obvious that we need to do something about that. So that is all I have. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope that this was a decent insight.